Well, I hope you guys are as excited as I am for this new release from Vanquish Products, the H10 Optic. It is their first plastic caged buggy that is also an RTR. I am super stoked for this thing. We're going to cover all the new details that go into this truck. It has some new axles, it has some familiar things like their VFD transmission. We're going to dig into it, check it out. Let's see what's going on with this H10 Optic. So we're going to start out with the axles on this truck, and when you look at the front steering axle, you'll notice right away that the tie rod is entirely different. It has a simulated hydraulic ram up front, which is super cool. But then you realize that the servo is behind the axle and inverted, which is pretty wild. So super cool to see that. The drag link actually attaches to the backside of the knuckle on the axle, and then that arm in turn turns the tie rod, which is that simulated hydraulic ram. So if you want to actually remove that centerpiece that looks like the hydraulic ram is a clamshell. You pull out those 4 screws and you can remove your tie rod if needed. The axles and the truck are riding on full sealed ball bearings, so that's awesome to see. That is high quality stuff as we've come to expect from Vanquish Products. These guys always make high-end kits and RTRs. Continuing with the axles, the gear sets in this should be the same as the VS410 axles or things like AR44 axles, Capra axles, with that helical high pinion cut gear set. It's going to be very standard and easy to find gears for these axles, and they're also a known strong gear set. It's going to work out great for this thing out there on the rocks. Now, if you're curious about the strength of that tie rod having multiple linkages like that, I did ask the guys at Vanquish if they did test with any stronger servos, and indeed they did. They said that they threw a servo in there with 1,000 ounces of torque, and they did find originally they were going to do a plastic drag link. They found that that was not going to be enough, so they switched to that metal-centered drag link. So that's an awesome upgrade to see. I'm glad they did that. And looking forward to testing this on my own, as I love lots of steering torque, and I also love getting these things all bound up and wedged in cracks out here in Sand Hollow, Utah. So I'm going to be using and abusing this thing, and we will see how these hold up. Now, more hidden details that you may not notice right off the bat are actually internal of this cage, and towards the center of the truck, kind of behind the driver's seat area, inside of the cage, there is a electronics tray in there where currently there are some electronics mounted up. But in the future, if you wanted to add something like Vanquish's VFD twin transmission that needs shifting servos, you can push out the plastic plate that is in there, maybe cut it out with a Dremel or something, clip it with some wire cutters. Then you can mount shifting servos inside the truck, hidden away, and everything should work out great. You can also mount other servos in there for other things that you could come up with. You could do a front winch and a rear winch if you so desire. It's really awesome to see all these different options available inside of this truck, and it should make it for some very interesting builds coming up in the future. As much as Vanquish loves their performance trucks and making everything as strong as they can, this one is also decked out in some scale details. We see a great looking driver here in the interior. Again, hard plastic. He's got the steering wheel in his hands. We do see the top of a passenger side seat. It does seem a little bit lacking on that passenger area for scale details, but overall, great looking truck, and I like that they have the driver in there. It does look appropriate to the rest of the vehicle. Moving towards the rear of the truck, we have a molded radiator that is tucked in front of the fuel cell to kind of block off the view down into the cage. So that's a nice scale detail there, not overlooked. Of course, we have our simulated hydraulic ram steering, which is a fantastic scale detail. I'm a huge fan of that. It really is a standout feature on this truck. I really like it. On the back, we've got our sponsored power tank. You can see that up there. That is removable with a couple screws. You will probably see my truck have that go missing here soon, but I'm gonna leave it on here for our first video. And then of course the fuel cell in the back with those aluminum anodized fuel caps. And then right below that with the differential, you've got the oil fill cap in there on your differential. Those are matching anodized parts. Another aspect of these axles is that these are a new design and they are wider than their standard F10 axles, including the rear. The rear looks very similar to the F10 axle found on like a Phoenix or a Fordyce, but this is its own axle that is actually molded to a wider spec. So really looking forward to, custom builds using these axles, and also looking forward to using it right here on the H10 Optic. It is a straight axle, it is non-portal, but I'm actually a fan of that. There's a ton of strength in the straight axle stuff. I've got plenty of portal rigs. Maybe down the road we'll see a widened F10 portal version. That'd be super cool. But for now, we get this straight axle version, and definitely looking forward to it. I've got zero doubts about the strength that these axles are going to offer. They are a steel universal style joint up front, so you're going to get tons of steering angle and lots of strength. Now when it comes to buggies, I love to do rear steer on my trucks, and Vanquish has thought ahead of that. In the rear of this fuel cell on this truck, the bottom of it is actually removable so that you could tuck a centered servo up under the fuel cell and help hide the rear steering servo while giving you the option of doing a rear steer axle on this. Very cool, very forward thinking, and I love that the guys at Vanquish are already thinking what I'm thinking, and that is four-wheel steer. One of the crazy details about this new rig that I almost overlooked when I first checked out the truck is that this is not a Lexan truck. This is a hard body rig. The panels on this truck are actually thick plastic that is considered a hard body. So it's ABS plastic, I believe. It's going to be really resistant to getting smashed on the rocks and whatnot, but this is not Lexan. So super cool to see that. This is Vanquish's first hard body offering, and I couldn't think of a better way to enter the market of hard body than with a Buggy. Of course, on those panels, we see this great looking livery from, this is the Yokohama version. So I have the gray and black combo. The cage is molded in gray. And then they also have a Sparco version, which is going to be a black cage with more blue on those panels. Personally, I really like the look of this cage. It looks kind of like some raw metal, as you would see on a Buggy that was built out of raw steel. Now I have my work cut out for me to describe all the awesome features that are tucked away and hidden in this cage that Vanquish provides. So let's start with the front end. If you decide to go away from these axles and do some of Vanquish's legacy axles or some of their existing aluminum versions, maybe some F10T axles, really just you think those would be great under this truck. You can convert this truck, which comes 4-link servo on axle, you can convert this chassis to a 3-link with chassis mounted servo, which is super cool. But the same place you would mount your chassis mounted servo, if you leave this truck in its current form, you can also mount a winch in that position, which is right under the hood and forward next to the steering servo. The steering servo sits on the axle and will move around, but your winch will stay located in the chassis itself and will provide a firm mounting point to get this truck winched up and over obstacles. Vanquish does suggest using an internal spool, so something like a Reef's IS300 would be ideal. It's low profile, internal spool, fast and strong. That's what I have, and I'm probably gonna slap one in here. Comes to working on these buggies, typically it can be a real headache to separate the cage from the lower drivetrain and get everything worked on. This truck in particular, these guys are not new to this, and the designer came up with an excellent, easy way to remove the body. So if you pull the door panels off, which are also your battery trays, we will check that out in a second, there are 3 screws that go through the rocker tube that on the chassis that attach it essentially to a slider portion that attaches to the drivetrain section. So you're going to pull those 3 screws out of each side, and then you're going to remove the top screws of your shocks, and then the cage will completely separate from the drivetrain. And there's no wires from the RTR from the cage to the chassis, so it will separate very easily. You can pick the cage up and set it out of the way, and then get to work on your electronics if needed. Now, as I mentioned, we do have familiar faces here, which would be the VFD transmission. This has been a staple for Vanquish. It's an excellent transmission. It's high strength. It puts the motor forward and low where you want it to get more performance out of your vehicles. It also has lots of optional upgrade parts on Vanquish's website. I strongly recommend the standard VFD high overdrive lightweight gear set. It's not inexpensive, but think about the different things that you gain when you go to that. You're making your transmission lighter, which is in your chassis. That essentially lowers your center of gravity, and you're picking up overdrive at the same time through hardened gears compared to the sintered metal gears that come with the truck. So you're getting 3 benefits all wrapped up in one nice, neat package. So it's very worth it in my eyes. I've run it in 3 or 4 of my trucks now, and I'm definitely gonna get this one swapped out in the future. Of course, with it being a VFD transmission, you could add their VFD dig unit on this, or you could swap the entire transmission and skid over to the VFD twin setup, which would allow you to have selectable overdrive and a dig feature towards the rear. One small detail towards the rear of the truck is we do see a sway bar mount there for Vanquish's sway bar. So if you want to go that route, add a little bit more scale realism, you just like the look of it, or you want the performance of it to make this one go a little bit faster and stay stable, you can put a sway bar in the rear. Other familiar parts we see are the KMC Riot beadlock plastic wheels. That's awesome because these wheels allow the use of the brass rings on the inside of those beadlocks or their sintered metal design. So if you want to add a little bit of internal rotating weight to the wheels, that works just fine with these wheels and you don't have to upgrade them just yet if you're not ready. Vanquish recently released their aluminum version of these wheels as well. So if you like the style but you want to add some color, you can go that route and pick them up directly from Vanquish. Other familiar parts on the truck, Incision S8E scale shocks. These ones, I'll be honest here guys, not my favorite. I pulled this truck right out of the box and they were leaking. Unfortunately, that's not weird in my experience. I've had other RTRs and I've also built them myself and I've always had struggles trying to keep oil inside of them. They are adequate, they're a 90mm shock, they look good. Unfortunately, I've always struggled to keep oil in them. I can't skip over the detail that they used an excellent large diameter stainless steel lower link on this truck. That's going to give us some beef and strength for bashing this thing on the rocks. The upper links are a smaller diameter, which are still going to have plenty of strength. I've never had any issues with upper links. Typically it's the lower ones if I'm going to have any issues. But this is the larger stainless lowers that we've known to have lots of strength. These are not the same as the VRD stance lower links. Those are a smaller diameter than this. And those had some issues, but this truck should be nice and stout with those straight stainless links. Now, if you're familiar with the Vanquish RTRs, all the electronics are the same. So essentially a Hobbywing 1060 ESC. We've got a 4-channel radio that comes with the truck. You only use 2 channels with this truck right out of the box, which means you could add a winch to it and add another servo and not have to upgrade your radio yet. It's actually really easy to set endpoints and change things on the controller. This is one of my favorite factory RTR controllers. On my Vanquish VRD stance, I'm still using that controller with that truck despite owning nicer radios. It's just nice to have a spare controller. If a friend comes along, I'll throw him that controller and he can drive that truck. But I'm a big fan of it, glad to see it return. The steering servo is the Vanquish VS1 with metal gears. It's water resistant. It's a good enough servo. As far as RTRs go, pretty standard, but I will be replacing it as soon as I burn this one up. We'll see how long she lasts. The tires on this truck are very, very awesome for RTR tires, not even just for RTR tires. These are solid aftermarket tires as well. These are the Vanquish Yokohama Geolander MTs. These are a 4.75 with the foams that come with this truck, and the fact that they are not vented, they are, a full 475 tire. So they're not huge like the VXT2s are. These are a real 475. So I like seeing that. The compound is Vanquish Red, so it is a sticky compound. And even on their RTR trucks, I'm convinced that these are the same tire that you get aftermarket from Vanquish. So it's super cool to see that. It's a high quality tire. You're going to be able to put some traction down right out of the box. Other RTRs in the past have kind of ruined themselves by not having good traction. This truck will have good traction for you right out of the box. So excited to see that as an option on this truck. Up front on the chassis, you will see some bump stops that look like air bumps on real cars. These in no way come in contact with the front axle that I can get the truck to articulate, whether I fully compress the front suspension or flex it out. So really just there for looks. If you were to convert this truck to 3-link, you would remove one of those bump stops, and that's where you put their metal panhard mount on the chassis side of things to go to a 3-link suspension if you plan to do that. This truck out of the box comes with a 13.2 wheelbase, although with my tape measure, it's looking more like a 13, kind of sitting at a full ride height. So very interesting to see that. With a 4.75 tire, if you go from a 12.3 inch wheelbase and compare it to this with a 13.2, you're really sacrificing belly clearance. You're gonna be able to reach higher and go up some steeper things before unloading, but expect to be hitting your belly a good amount more. And of course you can compensate the belly clearance by going to a larger tire. Something like a LP in the 5.25 range would look fantastic on this truck. I might know a guy. West Desert Wheeler cut and shuts would look pretty good on this thing. But of course, with this Yokohama on the side, I might have to figure out how to do a 525 Yokohama. You guys will have to drop a comment below if you think I should try that out. Also, the stickers on the little number plates on the back, I do sell sticker packs on westdesertwheeler.com. If you guys are interested in those, go ahead and grab yourself one and I'll get it shipped out ASAP. But overall, my assumptions of this vehicle, not having driven it, this truck's still sitting here shiny and new on the bench. Of course, you're seeing B-roll from me actually going out and running it. There's no dead tubes on this thing. These guys know how to design a real chassis. So it's fully triangulated. They've also added plastic in key areas to strengthen up and make it more rigid. Overall, I think this thing's gonna be super robust and tough. I really think you could run this hard without any issues, kind of what I've come to expect from Vanquish. And these guys have always made really strong, stout kits. There's really only one vehicle from Vanquish that has kind of deviated from going just the ultra strength route, and that is their super performance vehicles, the VRDs. So this is more in line with something like the VS410 chassis. In my mind, is just very strong and robust, and you can go out there and beat on it and trust that your Vanquish is going to come out in one piece on the other side. Typically, buggy cages like this last a good amount of time, so I'm excited to see how this one holds up. And great looking chassis, by the way, as well. Of course, somewhat reminiscent of a red dot, and that might explain where the name of this truck came from, the H10 Optic. Interesting. Now check out the battery tray on this truck. This is super cool. So you got these little body clips up here by your A-pillar on the windshield, and then you're just gonna pop this guy out, and then there's a metal pin that you're going to push just down slightly, and it's going to come out the bottom of the truck. You're able to get a hold of it with your fingertips, and then you pull the front edge of the door out slightly. Don't pull it any further than that, and then pull the whole door panel forward towards the front of the truck. There's a little latch in there essentially, and then you're able to pull this out and gain access to the inside of the truck as well as the battery trays that are in the door. Now, the door on the driver's side comes with the Velcro straps on it, so I'm assuming that's where they intend for you to put your battery out of the RTR. But of course, it looks like you can run 2 packs out of this thing, and it's super easy to access, and it's also very secure once it's in there. So that's really nice. The battery compartment dimensions are 93 millimeter by 36 by 42. So honestly, it looks something like a 1300 milliamp 3S pack would fit in there great. Do like a high voltage pack, something like that. Run one in each door, you get essentially 2600 milliamps runtime. That should be about 2 hours out there on the trail, maybe an hour and a half if you're having a good time on the throttle. As seen here, the truck does come with an XT60 battery connection. It's what I run in all my rigs. This is a great battery connection, and I really like them. Well, that is my rundown and review of the vehicle before I've driven it. Of course, we're gonna have some B-roll going across all this, and I'm going to do a running video. Expect that to release very soon along with this review video. So check out my channel, West Desert Wheeler. Get subscribed to follow for future content. I'm definitely going to be doing more videos with this truck, so stay tuned. But overall, I'm really excited from what I see. I trust the guys at Vanquish to come out with a quality product. Everything I see here is high quality. I'm looking forward to seeing how this thing performs. It definitely looks the part, and I'm excited to see how she does on the rocks. My name is Logan with West Desert Wheeler. I appreciate you guys watching my review of this truck. I'm sure there's been multiple to come out on the same day, so thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it. Drop a comment down below if you are excited for this. I was super stoked to see it when I opened up the box. I didn't know what they had sent me. I opened it up, and there it was. So thanks to Vanquish for sending this my way and thinking of me when this vehicle came out. I really do appreciate it, and I'm a big fan of what they've got going on with their latest releases like the Fordyce, the VRD, now the H10 Optic. These guys are not missing right now. They are coming out with awesome releases, and they get me fired up every time. I'll be sure to have affiliate links down below where you can pick up this truck or other parts that I like to run on my vehicles. Be sure to check those out. Check out my website, westdesertwheeler.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you in the next one. Keep the rubber side down.